Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another uLaw webinar. And today's webinar is going to focus on the uLaw Matter screen, and not just the Matter screen, but really the fundamental of the product and how it was designed and the way it was designed and the benefits of this most important, the caption being manage what matters. And we're going to try and demystify features, functionalities, questions around the Matter functionality, which is the core functionality of the uLaw product. Before I get started, I want to let you know that this particular webinar is not accredited for CPD, but it would most definitely be one of the most important webinars that we've conducted for those who are trying uLaw and for existing customers as well. This should hopefully be a good refresher of the great functionalities that are embedded within the Matter screen for you to take advantage of. And I kindly request you to ask your questions at any time during the session using our chat window, and our support staff will be available to answer any questions. And if there are certain questions that need to be parked for the end, I'll be happy to answer them after this webinar or during the last 5 minutes of this webinar. Okay? So every uLaw webinar has an agenda, and so does this particular one. There's a lot of ground to cover in today's webinar. It's going to be for about 45 minutes or 50 minutes with about 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A. And the core idea of today's webinar is going to cover the Matter functionality. And when I talk about the functionality itself, it was really by design how uLaw has approached legal accounting and practice management, where the file or the matter for a legal practitioner is of that much importance. So a deeper dive into looking at some of your friends within the Matter screen, the question mark and the action button. But more specifically, we're going to focus on how do you create a matter in uLaw. And for those who don't necessarily know, there is a functionality where you can clone workflows. So you could actually take your most, let's say there's a certain family matter that's close to your heart. You've done the dockets right, and it's almost repetitive for another matter. You are now able to almost copy that ideal matter that you've created for a certain practice, area of practice, and then copy it over to another client. So we're going to walk through how you can clone workflows, including description and all the good work that you've already put in. Certainly highlight the essence of the Matter screen, which is the ability for you to docket, the ability for you to disperse your clients. Quickly, we'll look through how you can quickly add a disbursement and how that reflects the different touch points of the Matter screen and the accounting backend. We'll focus on additional parties. We have conducted prior webinars and we'll be doing a lot more on the topic of additional parties, but we'll bring that into today's context as well, as it's a core part of the uLaw form feature. We want to highlight the ability for you, let's say you're a small legal firm or a law firm with multiple lawyers, let's say 2 or 3, the ability for you to collaborate using a single uLaw instance, if you will, the ability for you to bring in multiple counsels, have their own rates, and for you to collaborate on a single matter, and the opportunity for you to then generate timesheets and all the good documents that come out of the Matter files. Focus on document generation, one of the key aspects of the uLaw product, and many of the reporting capabilities that come along with the uLaw product as well. And the last 2 points we'll highlight in today's demo. And after this particular screen, I'm going to really get into the product and walk you through. So this is going to be a live demo session of walking you through these different agenda items one at a time. So we're going to talk about the integrated payment through the integration with Matters and Pivotal, how seamless we have made the integration of payment collection, both for trust and for general payments, right within the Matter screen. And last but not the least, really talk about the various analytics that you can drive at a matter level, a very granular level that can allow you to understand the hygiene of your business, the hygiene of a specific matter and or a client. Okay, so without delaying any further, I want to move ahead with getting into the uLaw product and highlighting the various components that we want to cover as part of our agenda today. Again, I'm reiterating that today's webinar is not accredited for CPD, but it's one of the most important sessions that we'll cover. We'll make it as interesting and as collaborative as possible. And please do use the chat window to ask any questions. And for those who are new to uLaw, we are a very proudly Canadian legal accounting and practice management software. And we welcome you to visit our website and give us a free trial. We offer a no obligation 30-day trial, and we'll be happy to set you up with an account. So now let me shift gears as always. I could see my annotation. I'm logged in as my fictitious lawyer, Roger Moore. This could be a paralegal, any legal practitioner across Canada using uLaw today. And I'm presented with obviously my dashboard, which is my landing page. And one of the core components, so when you look at uLaw, it's a legal accounting and a practice management software. And this is where our clients use uLaw for various reasons, right from client intake to getting their audit reports ready, kind of really soup to nuts, cradle to grave. And one of the core components of the uLaw product is our Matter screen, okay? And the way we designed it right from the get-go was to keep it simple and easy for our legal practitioner clients to use the product, where the legal accounting aspects of this business is almost subliminal, and it's almost behind the scenes as you, as a legal practitioner, work off the matter itself. So when you actually work on a file and you have a docket, you have a disbursement, those have dollars and money touch points, those are converted automatically into financial touch points and accounting touch points and readily downloadable audit reports. And we're going to talk about how the crux of that information is now stored within the Matter screen. As you're aware, almost the first step to anything in uLaw is the ability for you to intake a client, because it all starts with your client, and you're obviously going to create a matter for a specific client, and that client could be an individual, could be a corporation, etc. Okay, so let's go ahead, and instead of creating one, I'm going to quickly choose, I might as well go ahead and add one. So say add new contact, and to my clients group, I say, okay, I'll probably give her a nickname, and real quick, we'll give it an address. This client a particular address. I'll also mark how did Sandra get to know about my legal firm, right? Click on notes. All right, so let me go ahead and provide a fictitious, address that the Law Society would like you to capture. I'll just go ahead and mark this as the work address and the mailing address. And it's important that I stop here to let you know that the mailing address of a client is what gets used across correspondences, invoice, documentation, and last but not the least, the court form, where the address is one of the items that needs to be filled in with the client name. So ensuring that you mark one of these addresses as a mailing address is very important. And you can go ahead and fill in a phone number, email, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and click on the Save button. And once you save that particular contact, you're now going to be able to, it's going to say Saving Contact, and it's going to bring up Sandra's information. And now you have the opportunity to go ahead and create a matter file for Sandra. You obviously will do the necessary conflict screening, and you're obviously able to generate multiple documentation for Sandra as a contact. But truly, once you've done the due diligence and you're happy to represent Sandra, the next logical step really is to dive right into a matter or create a matter for the client. So to do that, let's go ahead and click on the Matter screen. Okay. And two fundamental things that we capture here, again, making it easy for you by capturing it right within the matter. But I'll walk you through how these two pieces of information are really critical to your business. The first piece of information that we capture in a matter screen is the title. So whether it's ease of search or whether it's the ability for you to quickly classify the actual or identify the actual file, and also for you to put that information on the documentation that you provide your client, the matter title is critical and it's important. And in uLaw, it's free text, meaning you can type whatever you feel like with regards to what that file number is or file name is. Okay? So depending on the area of practice, that's the second piece of information that we ask you for. This obviously is a configurable list. This follows your practice. So if you are a practitioner in various different types of legal practice, you are able to customize this list for your own firm. Let's go ahead and say that this was a small claims matter. And I'm going to go ahead and say Sandra versus Steffi, fence issue. One of the most common examples that I bring up. Let's look at a few other examples, but we'll start with this. We're not going to do a spell check. That's all there is. So all we do within the matter is ask for a title associated to an area of practice that this file belongs to, and you're going to hit the Save button. Now, the first step that uLaw does once you save that particular piece of information is provide you with a unique file number. Okay, so it takes the individual's first name's first alphabet, last name's first alphabet, and it hashtags today's date and time so that it's always a unique number. And it's important, as per Law Society's best practices, if you will, that you have your file number searchable and unique, because you don't want to have the same file number for two different clients. Now, many times we get asked, what about a file numbering system that I'm already using within my practice? That's a really good question, and our quick answer is you are able to bring that file numbering system right into uLaw. If you actually look at our quick view, it's a simple and easy way for you to search for any matter-related information. So this is a very critical supplementary feature to the Matter screen, because we allow you to classify matters as active, closed, and archived. And you can also search by all matters. But let's say I'm searching for any piece of information. So let's say I know the person's first name. I'm going to be able to search for it. And there's my Sandra Bullock matter, fence issue. But to the point of you being able to bring your own file number, we've seen certain law firms, legal firms, having a habit of being able to quickly search for file numbers that they're used to. So typically, let's say it's a 2017 file, and it's for the month of April, and it's my 6th client. This is a very typical example. If you can provide that right within the description, again, at the end of the day, it's for ease of search, ease of retrieval, and a common nomenclature that everyone within the firm can understand. And let's say you don't necessarily understand the client name, but you really want to know all your files for the month of April in 2017. You're able to type that, and we quickly map it to that particular file, even though our file number is different, and you can jump right into that file, okay, or that matter screen. So quickly, we were able to create a contact, Sandra Bullock, and all we've done so far is provided a title and associated to an area of practice, and showcased how you can bring your own file numbering for ease of reference. Now let me take the time to almost deep dive now into the different components that this matter screen provides. Okay, so you look at the file number, the title, and you have a court file number that you can provide. So if you're at that stage where you do have a court file number, you can bring that right here, and that gets used across court form setting as well. The rate and an assistant rate, as well as a cap. So let's say you don't want to go about $1,000 for your legal fees. you can always provide that fee cap right within there. And that's for your legal fees only. And the rates and the assistant rates are copied over right from your settings. So you go ahead and save it, because anytime you have information that you've inputted, we ensure that you save it. And once you've saved it, you can always navigate out of that screen. So within your taxes and rates, the default fee rate and the assistant rate that you have, the default assistant fee rate, is what gets copied over. But interestingly enough, that's kind of almost your default. But let's say Sandra Bullock is referred by a friend, and you really want to give her a reduced rate for the work that you're doing. You're always able to change that fee rate, and this is a per hour billable rate. You're always able to do it within the context of that particular matter. So it copies over your default, but you can always override it from case to case. And that's all the information we've captured so far. If I were to click on the edit button, you will see one other additional field here. And this is called the default tax rate. Now, this is a question that we get asked often. Depending on how you market yourself, we find these days some of the legal professionals can actually say, this particular file, I'm going to charge you $500, so let's say $1,000, flat fee, all inclusive, meaning taxes included. We're not going to charge you the additional 13% HST. As much as we'd love for you to capture that HST, if that's what you have to do to earn your business, then that's what you have to do, in which case you can always make that default tax rate and override it as a 0%. And when you do that, you're going to notice as I start docketing time, uLaw would not charge the HST on that particular file. Okay, so let's say I go ahead and quickly provide a docket title and a per hour rate. So it's going to capture the $150 for that 1 hour of that client meeting docket that I just entered. And because my tax is 0% default, uLaw includes that or does not add HST over and above that 150. But if I were to go back and just delete it and hit save, now you're going to notice it's going to recalibrate, and it's going to say it's $169.50 because it's $150 plus 13% HST. Okay. So let me go ahead and let's say you want to delete a docket until you've raised an invoice and those dockets are locked, or until you've reversed those invoice, you can always delete those dockets. So right at the end of that docket, you're going to notice this little X mark. Click on it. It's going to scratch it off, and you're going to hit save, and that particular docket is taken away from that file for now. Okay, so this is an empty slate, and there's a real method to the madness as to why I did that. Again, please use the chat window to ask any questions. Just a quick reminder. Thank you very much. So far, we've created a file, we've associated to an area of practice, and we've looked at the different fields that we provide, including tax rate, and you can also add any notes right within here. So I'm just going to add. This could be any notes that you have regarding that file. We'll hit on the Save button. All right. Now, depending on your situation, you may have the habit of collecting a retainer. And there are 5 tabs right within the Matter screen. And let's say the first step is for you to accept that retainer letter. Now, obviously, uLaw, through its document generation, which was one of the core components of our agenda today, if you click on the document generation, you're going to notice documents that you can generate that are billable in nature. So the way we've classified is documents or reports can be billable in nature. So your invoice, your statement of activities, your bill of costs, regenerating retainer receipts and payment receipts are all billables in nature. If there are documents that are client-facing as part of this matter, that you want to generate quickly. So let's say you want to generate a client ID verification document, which is a law society document. It's part of their bookkeeping guidelines. You are able to do that at a click of a button. So here, within a matter of a couple of seconds, we've taken all the information we know about this file for so far. We know the name, we know the address, and we're quickly able to give you a pre-filled PDF, which you can obviously edit. And you can file that. Okay? Let's say you took the driver's license, you're obviously able to file that right away. And the last classification of what you can generate out of documents are our reports. And we're going to get to this at the end once we've had a little bit of meat to go into this file. So the first thing you can do right before even getting the retainer is generate the client ID verification, a conflict screening report that talks about why you determined that Sandra Bullock was not a conflict. And then comes the options for you to generate some sample retainer letters. And our idea here is to kind of give you a jump start. So if you are a new practitioner or if you're looking for different types of templates, by clicking the retainer letter, it starts off with some simple templates. So simple, elaborate, flat rate, these are three options. And the importance of this is that you can generate these letters both in PDF and in MS Word. And the beauty of generating a document in MS Word, as you know, is that you can always tweak it and update it and edit that. We also support French as a language, so you can generate these documents both English and French. And this is a list of all your co-workers. Okay, so often we get asked, what is this drop-down? So if you're a solo and if this is just all by yourself, and this is the only name you probably see, Roger Moore is the legal practitioner here. But let's say this was a collaborative effort. You have a co-worker who's an assistant, another legal professional who's working with you. You add their information under the co-worker group in your contacts, and that is part of this drop-down. So let's say your admin, Maya, actually had to do this retainer letter. She could actually mark herself as the individual who did it. So it's easier for you to capture the workflow of who did what within that legal firm. Okay? And a new feature is that you can actually add the retainer amount right here. So let's say this is a $500 retainer. You can go ahead and put that number in and hit the download button. And within a matter of seconds, we provide you with a template of a retainer letter. So the retainer letter section is one area where you want to go to generate. So here it is, a retainer letter. Sandra was a Steffi. It has all the basic information in it. It has the legal professional's information, the client's information, and you can see this is the mailing address that we stored in. Has a file name, a file number, and now you have the ability to generate that. So I don't want to dive deep into this any further. Just want to let you know that the $500 that you added is brought right into here, the retainer amount. Okay? There are additional samples of retainer letters right under letters, and I'm going to just take a quick few minutes to walk through all these documents because they all have their own importance. We do have an authorization letter that you can quickly review if you want to get that letter on behalf of your client. Okay, you probably want to get this signed for multiple documents, depending on the area of practice, obviously. If for some reason either yourself or your client decides to not engage, we have a sample for that as well, all within the context of this matter. Okay, sometimes these features and functionalities gets overlooked within the hustle bustle of day-to-day activities. This non-engagement letter talks about the file name, the file number, and you can obviously add the reason for it, sign it, and have your client sign it. And then within letters, we actually support different types of letters in the context of this file, a business letterhead, a master letterhead. We even have a client intake form. And as part of our big enhancement that's due in June, we'll make that available as part of an easy way for you to intake client information right from your website and make that as a client intake into your contacts. and then some additional samples for retainers. Okay, so have a look at it when you dive into uLaw, the ability for you to do hourly. There are samples for contingency, and there are very specific samples even for POA and other areas of practice. Okay, so right before you even take that retainer, these are a bunch of all the documents that you can generate for that client. And now let's say you've gone ahead and signed that retainer, which is really the next step. Sandra leaves your office and she's really happy she signed it. And just before she leaves your office, she's obviously going to give you that $500 in retainer. Now let's move to the next logical step within this matter screen. So you're going to notice that you're going to spend, as a legal professional using uLaw, a good majority of your time right within the matter screen. And it's all very chronological. So disbursements and retainer is a tab right within uLaw that gives you the opportunity to add that new retainer that Sandra provided. And the pieces of information we ask for is the date. Obviously, we're able to backdate this using the calendar. Let's say it's $500. Now, you are obviously able to tell us how Sandra paid for it. We spoke about the integrated payment collection. Now, when you connect either with the Matters or a Pivotal payment gateway, and we integrate with both, and we're obviously looking to expand on that list, including other banks and other players in this mix. But right now, we integrate with these two parties. Right within the payment collection, let's say you do have, and this is a Pivotal screen, let's say you do have that, you can go ahead and take Sandra's information right when she's at your office in front of your desk and take the credit card information. Okay? I'm going to go ahead, take the expiry date. And the importance of this integration is that now you can avoid, bounce checks, and you can avoid, the embarrassment of you having to manage your reconciliation. Sometimes it could be at a really bad time that your check bounces. You actually have the input into uLaw, but it's really not reflected in your bank. It becomes yet another part of it. The biggest advantage of this is that it, in real life, connects to your client's bank account, ensures there's money in the bank, and depending on whether there's money or not, tells you right away if that $500 is approved. And if it is approved, either Matters or Pivotal would ensure that $500 is deposited into your trust account, and your trust account is left untouched, and whatever is the transaction fees that they charge, whether it's 1% or anything else, let's assume it's 1%, that amount is then now transacted out of your general account. Okay? So all we've done is taken that $500 right within uLaw by integrating right within the matter screen. And let's take that reference number. All you do is you tell us that it was a credit card payment. That was the reference number. And if someone else paid on behalf of Sandra Bullock, maybe it was her assistant or brother, sister, husband, you can always bring that person's information, and the receipt will then be made on their name. Let's go ahead and click on the receipt. So basically, we're asking, do you want to provide a receipt before she leaves? And it's always a great habit to do that. And let's hit apply. When you do that, the matter screen now functions and has two steps. One, it generates the retainer receipt for you, but also behind the scenes, it's now transacted that as a retainer amount into that particular file for Sandra Steffi. And within the retainer receipt, you have the opportunity to also provide your client with an additional sales receipt, make it a simplified, someone else in your office who generated everything else. And additional description you want to put in, you can do that. Okay, so within the last 10, 15 minutes, we've showcased how you've added a client, Sandra. We clicked on the matter. And if you have actually a matter for Sandra Bullock, it's taken right into that. We gave it this particular file a title, associated to an area of practice, and we've just taken a $500 retainer through a credit card payment. Okay? And now you're able to quickly send an email compose an email, and here's a retainer receipt that you can just drag and drop. Okay? Now let's move on. So now comes the next part of the next logical step is for you to put in the effort as part of this file. So you obviously want to win this case for your client. Now comes the next step, which is really your effort that goes in. And in the legal lingo, it's a combination of dockets, which we call events, and disbursements. Okay, so depending on the file, there are various ways in which you can represent the dollars and the cents and the money that is now associated with the effort that you're going to put in as the legal professional. Quick to note that the projected balance tells you right away, as soon as you get into this matter, it tells you right away that there's either a $500 that you would have to refund or pay out, really depending on the situation. It's real estate. I think it's a different nomenclature. It doesn't always have to be a refund. But in this case, it is a refund because if Sandra were to non-engage you, and with you having not reflected any of your effort as a docket or as an invoice, you would have to not, refund that $500. And that's what we're telling you here. Now let's do that. It's a very complex situation. It's not the norm. Someone gives you and then refunds you, and then you refund. But we'll maybe hold on to that later on. And that's when I focus on the action button, which has the action button really within the Matter screen, you should know, has every possible functionality feature right within the screen. And what we've done, make it a little bit more user-friendly and intuitive. Let's say, for example, the Add New Disbursement is made as part of the Disbursements group, where it's the same button, it's the same screen, but any functionality that you see within the Matter button, the screen, you see it right within the action button. Just FYI. Now let's go ahead with docketing time and effort within this matter. I'm going to look at a few examples, really depending on, because uLaw is being used right from small claims POA to someone who does criminal family law, and your style of docketing, your style of generating invoices may differ. Each docket captures a date when that happened, so you're always able to backdate it. Captures a time if you're into legal aid. Captures a title so that you can identify what the docket was. And it has a smart dictionary that it captures every time you add it. So let's say it's an initial client meeting. Click on the description. The description now talks about, this is where you can continue to add and expand on that particular title, what actually happened during that meeting. And we capture two different times, or really the time, the estimated time, which is the time that you spent on this particular docket, and the actual billable time, so the actual time that you bill this particular docket. As many times the other way around, we've often heard from legal professionals that they tend to spend a lot more time, but tend to charge their clients much lesser from the effort they put in. The reason why we want to capture these two is so that we, at the end of the day, as the smart legal accounting software that we want to be, can provide you the deep dive analytics, almost we have your back, and we can tell you, hey Roger, for that particular file for Sandra, you actually spend more time than the money you're making in the context of this docket, right? So you spend 1 hour, that's $150 worth of money, but you're only charging them 30 minutes. Let's say you go ahead and docket that and you hit save. This is your first docket. So it's taken the 30 minutes of the $150 and it's charged you with tax $84.75. Let's move on. Let's say you want to add another docket. You'd say add new event. Let's say this was a document drafting. And let's say you're in the habit of docketing it as a flat rate. Right within that docket, by clicking that arrow, you're now able to toggle it as a flat rate docket and you continue to expand on the description. And this is something that you will be able to share with your client as part of the invoice, so that the invoice comes across very clean, fairly straightforward, and there are no questions to be asked. Another way that you can docket right within uLaw is using our stop clock. Really, depending on your area of practice, this differs, but we do have that functionality, especially for telephone conversations. If you click on that little stop clock, you're going to notice the various, the time starts, you're on a phone conversation, you can pause, fast forward, you can round it to the next 6 minutes and go ahead and docket it. And as part of the Smart Dictionary, it takes the 18 minutes that I just spoke to the client Sandra over the phone, calculates it, and it charges the 12 minutes and charges it accordingly. The last, category, if you will, of how we classify a docket in uLaw is the ability to classify it as a pro bono. Interestingly enough, we're actually talking to the Canadian Bar Association next week, where there's actually an article that's going to come out about how can legal professionals reduce the non-billable hours of their practice. And we actually had this feature right from the get-go, and the science behind why we did that was that we felt that the first thing you as a legal professional need to know is how much of non-billable time are you actually spending in your practice. So let's go ahead and let's say a document review was one among those dockets, and you can now mark this as a pro bono docket, and then tell us, let's come up with something random. So let's say you spent 5 hours of your time, and now you're giving it free of cost. So this is a non-billable docket. You do this every day. Every legal professional at some point of time does this. But what's important is that you're able to capture it at the right time and the proper format so that it's always available for you to review. And we have a WYSIWYG editor, which allows you to do spell checks. You can bold type it, italics it. You can beautify that as much as you want. So let's go ahead and save. So this is a typical file where I'm mixing and matching. There are various different styles. You can make the entire docket or the entire matter as a flat rate. You can have a contingency. If this is a contingency, you can always add a contingency docket that asks really how much is the contingency amount, fee, and it calculates the amount and it puts it in as well. So those are the top 5 ways in which you can mix and match dockets. Now, as you continue down that path of providing those different dockets, you're going to notice that the projected balance has reduced from that $500 by the actual amount or effort that you put in. Now, here's where it starts to get a little bit more interesting with the Matter screen in a very subliminal way, touching other aspects of the business and the uLaw product. For example, you notice that right now the next logical thing to do in this matter is to raise an invoice. Okay, unless you raise that invoice, you're not going to be able to tell your client that you did all this effort, because otherwise it's all going to stay within your office. That invoice is that legal document for you to tell your client the effort you put in. But it's our duty, we feel, to remind you of that. Not only within the Matter screen do we remind you that, our dashboard does a fantastic job of reminding you all the invoice pending matters. Ideally, I always tell my clients, ideally you want this dashboard item to be empty, because that way you're caught up on all the invoices that you need to generate. So clicking on the Sandra versus Steffi takes you right into that matter, and this again reminds you that, hey Roger, it's time for you to generate that invoice. Now let's go ahead and do just that. To do that, you're going to hit document generation, and a lot of questions are being asked about our pre-bill. Now the pre-bill is really a preview of what that invoice would look like if you were to generate it now. but it's a very internal document. It does not generate an invoice number, and it actually puts a little watermark as well so that you don't accidentally send it to your client. It has a few features that you can add to that invoice. So you can set your terms right from penalty rates, and this is all free text. So you could say 1.5% per month or 18% per year, whatever is your style. You can mark this as paid. I'm not going to do that. I'll do it in the original bill. But let's say we go ahead and mark it as paid. You can actually generate a legal aid document right within that. So if you do that, we're going to ask you what the certificate number, solicitor number. So this is the legal aid as per the format that's requested in Ontario. The date of the invoice. We also send a little summary of every invoice that you generate. It will not be done for a preview, but you can do that for the original and who within your firm did it. So let's do a quick preview. And this is what a preview looks like. This is for your internal consumption. Maybe it's your assistant doing that preview and sending you an email, getting you to approve it. This is one of the styles of templates that we have for our invoice. We actually have over 15 different invoice templates. So that's your information. It tells you right away what the balance in trust is. It tells you all the work you've done and the retainer you received. It puts the little stamp paid, and that's the retainer balance in trust for you ready to sign. So you as the lawyer look at it, you're comfortable with it, and you're going to give the go-ahead to generate that invoice. So let's go ahead to do that. You'll hit complete, do the same step, choose the different themes that you have, and let's go ahead and generate that invoice. And as you notice, all of this is right within that one Matter screen, right? When you hit the download button, this generates the first invoice for Sandra Bullock so that you can now send it as part of your communication. I'm not going to dwell too much into the invoice, but the most important point to note is that this is where you sign and you go ahead and send it. Now, as part of our agenda, we spoke about the two important buttons once you've started to get into docketing and dispersing. And the most fundamental one would be the question mark. Okay, the question mark, obviously we're trying to make it a little bit more visual so that you understand. So we're going to actually come up with a question mark that's either jumping or is colored so that you know that you can take an action. But the question mark now gives you further insight into this particular matter. So we call it matter analytics, but essentially what it allows you to do is it gives you the perfect snapshot of that matter as it stands today. So it tells right away that one invoice has been raised. You can always reprint it. If the client says, hey, you know what, Roger, I lost that invoice that you sent me, buddy, can you resend it to me? You can always reprint that same invoice number, and you can use multiple themes, and you can do that. Clicking that question mark, it tells you the amount for which that was invoiced, and if it's been paid so far. It hasn't been paid as you've not moved the money from trust to general. It gives you a quick ledger snapshot for both trust and general. But most importantly, it tells you this one particular actionable item, which is you are now able to transfer the eligible amount for which you invoiced from your trust to your general. Now, before I do that, I want to highlight that as and when you generate invoices within uLaw, we also send you this little summary. And the most important aspect of the summary, and many times is overlooked, is this critical information, which is the eligible trust account transfer. Now imagine how helpful this email would be is if you're in the bank or in your bank account online and you're looking to transfer funds from trust to general, you know the exact amount that you need to transfer from trust to general in real life. And let's say you've done that, then you come into uLaw and you tell us that you've done that so that we can be catching up to the real life activities that have happened, making your reconciliation that much more faster. So let me go ahead and hit the transfer button. It brings out that one legal fee of invoice that we raised. It's going to put the date, the actual trust account, moving it to your general account. And let's go ahead and transfer. And because it's an electronic fund transfer, right within the workflow, right within the Matter screen, you can tell us what the account numbers are of your trust and your general accounts. There's a little accounting 101. In this context, the trust account is your debit account and your general account is a credit. Okay, so you've gone ahead and generated the Form 9A, which is a critical document that you need to generate for every electronic fund transfer from a trust account to a general account in Ontario. So you sign this and you keep it ready when time comes to audit. Okay, so in a quick jiffy, we've gone through different components of what you were able to accomplish within the Matter events and raising an invoice. Now let's move ahead real quick into disbursements. I click on the disbursement tab, talks about the different opportunities that you have to add disbursements. Could have been from general, paid from trust, could have been a miscellaneous expense, or even a consultancy expense. Okay, so I'm going to say paid from general. I'm going to quickly use fax as an option. I'm going to say 25 faxes, and let me override this and make this $2 a fax. I'll add the tax. And the beauty of the uLaw product right within the Matter is not only can you disperse your client, you can also expense it to your business, because we are a legal accounting software, and this is how, by keeping it at the Matter level, behind the scenes, we've got your back, we're doing the accounting as well. So let's say that particular day, and this is a common example I give all my clients, let's say that fax machine in your office did not work, and you actually had to go to the nearby Staples, and you paid $32, including a $4.16 of HST, because we're in Canada, we're in Ontario, and that's what we have to live with. And these are the different tax codes depending on the jurisdiction that you're at. And let's say all within this one screen, all within the Matter screen, all within the workflow that takes you one step at a time. So you paid using a credit card, and your Visa would probably give you that transaction number. And in one screen, you're accomplishing two tasks. You're dispersing your client, but you're also capturing the expense for your business, because that's who you are at the end of the day, a legal practitioner, business owner. Okay, so you always want to keep that in mind. As soon as you walk into the Matter, you know there's still about $211 left in trust, because that's the amount of work you've put in. That's the disbursements out there. With that disbursement, you have that invoice pending. So let's go ahead, for lack of time, but I only have 10 more minutes. I want to cover a little bit more. Let's add one final docket, and I will mark this as a flat rate, and I will have $200. I'll say I spent 1 hour on it. Say final closure. Okay. Let me go ahead and save. It's really important that anytime you edit information within uLaw, you hit the Save button. If you do see the Edit button, which means that all's fine, everything is saved, and there's nothing to change. If you have to change it, click on Description. You're going to say Conversation. All right, so now if you notice, based on that one disbursement of $50 and a $200 final closure, the projected balance, which really is how much of money you owe the client or the client owes you. Now, you're in black, and as the Canadian government says, being in black is good, because this means the client actually owes you $14.15 over and above the initial retainer that she paid you. So let's quickly go ahead and generate an invoice. And let me do this in a calm orange. And I will not mark this as paid simply because she owes me $14 in payment. And the beauty of the Matter screen is you're just working off the dockets, the disbursements, and we're going to jump into the rates and additional parties in a minute. But this is the critical piece of your day-to-day business, right within uLaw, right within what you do as a business. And here's where we also integrate with the gateway, payment gateway, where if you actually send an electronic invoice to your client, she can actually pay you in real time. She can actually open the email, open the invoice, and pay you at her own leisure. And it would only be for the outstanding balance of $14.50. Just like how you process that right within your office, you're now able to extend it right within your invoice as well. Okay? So there were no accounting touch points. All you've done is you've told us the file name, how much a retainer you got in, all within legal lingo, the dockets that you put in, any disbursements, and raised invoices. The importance of this is behind the scenes, because I'm sure you appreciate how much part of a legal professional's business is also managing the accounting aspects to it. Behind the scenes, what we've done is for every matter touch point, there is an immediate accounting touch point, especially when there are dollars involved. So when you put that retainer in, we were able to do behind the scenes of being able to ledger it appropriately. Okay? And when you raise that invoice for $231, we've ledgered it, and it also has the Form 9A that you just printed. Now, the most important thing is the question mark. Click on it. You know there are two invoices, but there are two different actions to take. One is the $236 that you need to move from trust to general, which is the outstanding trust balance that you move from your trust to your general account. And let's say you write yourself a check. You can also print that check right within uLaw. It's a PDF that you can then print it out on your printer, and it just embossed right on top of that. Also, it's important to note the question mark. That $14.15 that Sandra Bullock paid at your own time, how are you to know whether she paid it or not? Every time a transaction happens and your client pays you, we then send you an email, okay? That automatically gets captured for the amount paid, so you know that she's paid you for the $14.50. Go ahead, credit card. And that's pretty much it. So real quick, you've been able to access a file, docket, disperse, invoice, and get paid. But what's important to note, this obviously you do day-to-day life in some shape or form, but the most important aspect of why we did it within the Matter screen is how it's married to the other components of the product. Now, if I were to go into my accounting, every Matter touch point that you had for that particular file is converted into ledgers. So if I do a client's trust ledger for that individual, Sandra Bullock, every Matter touch point is now converted to the necessary ledger touch point or the audit report touch point that's required to be provided by you as a legal practitioner. And you did not generate this. The software did it for you for the fees that you pay for it, right? The $500 that we got in as a retainer, the first invoice, and the second invoice that we raised. It's a balanced ledger, and you can do a similar thing with your trust, your general, your expenses. And that's how you would continue to function through uLaw, right within the Matter screen, but how that percolates into the accounting touch point is really the recipe to success. Important to note the rate. Let's say you want to bring in an additional counsel or another colleague who's part of your contact group. You can always add a specific rate that you're bringing them in. So let's say Leanne charges $250 per hour. You're always able to bring that have her docket it. So an important way in associating that counsel is by marking this docket as that particular counsel's rate. So when I charge that 1 hour, it's not going to charge for the $150. It's going to take the L2, which is the rate that has been associated to L2 Leanne, at $250. And when you actually raise an invoice, you'll notice that it's for $250. Okay, so that's the importance of the rate, is the ability for you to bring additional coworkers and have their rates associated as they collaborate in the effort they put into this matter. The additional parties is also a very important aspect, and I'm going to close with this for any questions. This is the form feature of being able to autofill or pre-fill information. So let's go ahead and make this as small claims. So you're going to have plaintiff-defendant situation. So I'm going to add Steffi as a contact or as an additional party. And you can also add additional parties, such as the representative of Steffi, because this is a Sandra versus Steffi fence issue. This is really the opposing parties. And right within the Matter screen, as I said, you're not going anywhere outside the Matter screen. Under Forms, you have the ability to generate the small claim form. Okay, so if I were to go ahead and do a plaintiff's claim in the Ottawa courthouse, right within the Matter screen, I've been able to generate for that file, for that matter, through the additional parties. And the documents is the ability for you to connect with Google Drive and be able to store all these documents right under the context of that file. And all these documents is something that you can save anywhere. So we give you the opportunity to save these documents in your local computer, but if you like it to be stored on the cloud, then right now we integrate with Google Drive to facilitate that. And as you notice, for that particular file, Sandra Bullock, you have her nickname, her address, your information, the defendant's information, and so is the representative. It's almost 100% filled document, all within the context of this matter. Okay. With that, I would like to open the floor for any specific questions that you may have, as we have maybe another couple of minutes of Q&A. Thank you very much, and please feel free to send us an email with feedback on the session and or any other sessions that you would like us to conduct on a weekly basis. So a quick question is, are you able to raise matters if you're using a smartphone? In today's context, the smartphone app is a read-only, but we are going to give you the opportunity in our next release, that's due in June, that would allow you to docket time right within your phone. Okay, a question is about the export feature and what that does. Let's say you've done all the effort and you really want to export that information. Now you are able to export any information in uLaw in different formats, and one of the most common formats is an Excel sheet. So you can either do a detailed or a summary. Every touch point that you've done, you can now export it into a CSV file by just clicking on that export feature. And that's all there is. Every touch point that's happened. So here's an Excel sheet illustrating everything that's happened on that file. Got that retainer, the disbursements, the client payment. All the information is now available to you. And once you're done with the actual file, you can go ahead and mark this as closed or archived. These are just two different statuses that we've given you so that you can focus on the active files. So traditionally, it's a closed file unless you want to open it again. Always say mark as active. The last question I'll probably take for the day, quick question, is the copy feature. So let's say that this particular fence issue was a docket, is your ideal docket, and you really love this. Okay? So let's say you're creating another file for another client who's also a fence issue. So you go ahead and say, let's say this is Mary Jones. And I'm going to quickly go ahead and click the Save button. And you know Mary Jones also has a very similar fence issue like Sandra Bullock. And the most important thing is to understand or remind yourself of that ideal fence issue client that you want to use. So you can always use the quick view to look at any fence issues in the title. Use Sandra Bullock as a template. Go into the ideal template first, go into action, and use this feature called Copy Matter. And we're going to ask you, to which client would you like to copy that matter to? All you have to do is choose Mary Jones. And we're asking you, do you also want to take weekdays, any descriptions? And when you copy over that matter, we take all of those documents without the time, obviously, with the description, without putting the billables. We take that entire template and we copy it over to Mary Jones's file. Now you can either search for Mary Jones within contacts, or you are able to search for that matter right within the matter itself, the matter screen. So I can go ahead and click on Mary Jones. It's going to quickly bring up that file. It's copied right from Sandra, Steffi, all of the information that you need by emptying out the billable time. So all you have to do is change this, who the opposing party is, change the court file number. That's it. So you don't have to repurpose. I mean, we give you the opportunity to repurpose all of that information by using the copy feature. It's right under the action. And if there are no more further questions, I just want to quickly highlight the action button, the ability for you to anything deposited in trust. Again, we classified it. When you're depositing in trust, I mean, this is one way of doing it, but you can always use our retainer button. You can refund your retainer, bring any intermatter trust transfers, and also the ability for you to add discounts or write-offs on a particular matter is all done using the action button within the file. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and we will be sending you a link to your email address. And if you did participate in the webinar, we would appreciate if you could fill in that as a feedback form. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar next week, which is accredited for 1 hour of CPD credits. Thank you very much, and have yourself a fantastic day.